1 year ago today, we watched with our very eyes the chaos that ensued at Kabul airport. 13 lives were lost 1 year ago today. Islamic State terrorists killed 13 U.S. service members. Yes, 13 lives that should still be here with us today, but they aren't. You know why? Because of one man. A man who's incompetent at managing a successful withdrawal. A man who only knows how to point fingers and not take the blame. And a man who is clearly incapable of apologizing for any wrong that he's committed. What has our president done today to commemorate this 1 year for the families, the tragedy? Let's bring in Florida Congressman Greg Steube to talk all about it. Congressman, thanks for joining us today. I know you're former Army. Thank you for your service. It sure is interesting to me how 1 year later, and no one has taken any responsibility. No one's been held accountable for any of this.
Well, and they certainly don't want any attention drawn to the Afghanistan withdrawal because it was a complete debacle and a complete failure on the part of the Biden administration. As we sit here talking today, there are still Americans trapped behind enemy lines in Afghanistan, and this administration is doing nothing to get them out. When we have hearings with Secretary Blinken and we talk to him, we get there's 300, there's 500, there's 1,000. They don't even really know that the Americans that are still stuck there. And then we have our allies that have been stuck behind enemy lines. We don't have communications there because we pulled our assets out. It's just very frustrating as a person who served in Iraq and served in the military to see such a horrible display of leadership on the world stage that was our Afghanistan withdrawal.
You know, earlier today, Biden was getting off Marine One when he was asked about his communication with the parents of the 13 killed servicemen and women. Take a listen to his response.
Mr. President, have you spoken to any of the family members of the 13 soldiers who died last year in Afghanistan?
Not today, but I have spoken in the past.
This is just not enough. As I mentioned, you served in the U.S. military. You were out there. Like many of these folks, they sign up to put a target on their back to go across the globe and make sure the liberties and freedoms that we're guaranteed here are protected. How does this hit home for you?
Well, it's just a complete disrespect to the service. And a lot of those family members don't want to talk to Joe Biden because they know that Joe Biden was the reason why their child died in combat, a completely preventable death. The person that the bomber was released from Bagram. All of the military advisors said not to relinquish Bagram Air Force Base. We should have used that for our evacuations. They had more airspace, they had more runways, so on and so forth. And it was all because of the decisions that Joe Biden made, the decisions that his administration made that led to the deaths of those 13 service members and over 200 Afghans, along with $83 billion worth of our military equipment that was paid for by our tax dollars. And I told Secretary Blinken in a hearing that his legacy was going to be Taliban soldiers hoisting their flag, wearing our military gear, holding our weapons, and that was going to be his legacy.
With all the billions we're sending over to Ukraine, it would have been nice to have a little stockpile, that $83 billion. We could have sent some of that over maybe to Ukraine. But, you know, but just from your perspective as a former member of the military, I know you're always a member of the military at heart, you're a vet. Do you think that it's really goes all the way to the top, or some of this kind of woke military stuff contributed to how poorly the plan was to get out?
I think it went all the way to the top. Secretary Blinken, the Secretary of the State, Department of State, was the one supposedly in charge of the withdrawal, which is interesting because it's a military operation. So DOD points the finger at the Department of State, and Department of State points the finger at DOD, and then Joe Biden just stands back like he doesn't know what's going on, which he probably doesn't know what's going on, but he's the commander in chief and ultimately responsible for the decisions or lack of decisions that were made in Afghanistan. A complete failure, and I will submit to you this. When the Republicans take the majority in November and get the gavels in January, there will be an account that will be made of the decisions that were made, and the Republicans will hold accountable those people in DOD and the Department of State that made those decisions that led to those deaths.
Well, let's hope the red wave comes our way, and there sure will be a lot of investigations when Republicans have the gavel. Florida Congressman Greg Steube, thank you so much.
Thank you.
All righty, coming up, DHS Secretary